Welcome, everyone, to Beyond the Donation podcast. You are sure to recognize the fact that I am not Matt Bitsagai. I am Val Kleppen hosting today because Matt Bitsagai happens to be one of our guests, along with his co-founder and friend in DonorDock, Andrew Luchin. Hello, gentlemen.
Good morning,
Hello,
Val.
good morning.
How are you today?
Good. We just had
Great.
our weekly coffee session with our team, and that was great. So getting this done now this morning. So good morning so far.
Yes, the tables are turned. Are you gentlemen nervous?
Not
No,
particularly.
not really.
You should be. You should be.
All
But
right.
I just want to start every episode of Beyond the Donation podcast starts with the guests introducing themselves. So I would like to do the same for that this morning. I'll have Matt, I'll start with you. Just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then you can pass it on to Andrew.
All right. Well, my name is Matt Bitsagai. I am the normal host of the Beyond the Donation podcast and the co-founder of DonorDock. I live in Fargo, North Dakota. I have been in kind of the CRM and technology space for 20 some years now and have been able to work with nonprofits for about the last 6 years exclusively. So really like what we're doing with DonorDock. I love the customers that we get to work with and the missions that we get to support. And happy to have Andrew sitting next to me and being a part of this from the beginning as well.
Yeah, I'm Andrew Luchin, co-founder and chief technology officer at DonorDock. Very similar to Matt. It's been about 20 years in the software engineering kind of professional field. And I've been with DonorDock. I'd have to do a little math, but what has it been?
6 years.
6 years. Yeah, also really love what we're doing. I'm also in Fargo, North Dakota.
As you can see, because we're sitting next to each other.
Yes, but I live here too. So.
I rarely get to have guests where we're actually like in the same room. So this is kind of fun.
All right. It looks sharp having you there next to each other, I got to say. But so that was all the corporate schmorporate stuff. And you know me and the HR person. It's funny because personally, I hate participating in icebreakers, but I do love forcing others to do the same. And so for the sake of our listeners today, I'm just going to ask you each one question. It'll be different. So don't try to prepare your answer based on what I asked the other question. But Matt, you are an outdoorsman. You love hunting, fishing, all of those things. But what is your favorite either game or fish to consume?
Oh, good question. Probably, I would say fresh walleye is tough to beat.
You know what? If I were a gambling woman, and I'm not, but I would have bet money on that answer. So
yeah, pretty good.
It's pretty good. And Andrew, I want to be funny and say drum
Yes.
roll, but what is your favorite song to drum?
Oh, that is a good question. And honestly, I don't think I could answer that. It really depends on the mood and how warmed up I am. And
how about certain genre? What kind of genre would be your favorite?
That's kind of funny too, because what I listen to is not necessarily what I play.
Mhm.
I guess I'd say my favorite song to drum to is one I'm actually playing with my bandmates with live. It's one thing to be in the basement, which is where I usually am by myself, but getting out there and performing, that's my favorite.
I love that. Good answer, gentlemen. Good answer. So you talked a little bit in your introduction about how long you've been in this space, but how did the two of you actually come to know one another?
Yeah, we've been working together now since probably like the early mid 2000s, like 2007, 8ish time frame.
Yeah, and maybe even a little bit before, because I think we initially met when you hired me.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened through a mutual contact that we had.
Yep.
And he was a coworker at the first job I had out of college. So it was, definitely 2000 maybe even.
Yeah, and it's just been one of those situations that when you find people that you enjoy working with and trust and have a good synergy with it, you kind of stick with those people. And we've been at several different jobs where we've both ended up at the same place. And really, when had the idea for DonorDock, Andrew, I think, was the first person that I called and said, come over, I want to show you some thoughts. And that's kind of how we kicked this off. But yeah, we've been working together professionally for quite a number of years now. And like I said, various roles and various companies, but we've gotten to know each other well as far as how to work together. And, we're very different people. I'm a little more action oriented and Andrew's a lot more thoughtful sometimes. And so that kind of balances things out pretty well for us. So that's worked pretty well as we've worked together professionally.
Yeah, we're, like Matt said, we're different. I was thinking back to some of the personality tests or the disc things that we've done. And I think I'm more of a C type, that data oriented thoughtfulness, and you're more of, I think it's D, where it's the confident leader, but we have lots of similarities too. So yeah, just work really well together.
Matt's kind of a ready, fire, aim. And Andrew's more of a ready, aim,
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
So you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but what really motivated to you creating DonorDock? How did that get started?
Yeah, so we had been in the kind of the Microsoft channel for a number of years at a previous employer. And through that, we were working with enterprise CRM and some custom software things that we'd built on top of that. For one of those products was really targeting the nonprofit sector, and just really kind of continued to see how those kind of monolithic, enterprise type CRMs were really, really challenging to get implemented well within specifically the smaller nonprofit space. So like that mid-size and down. And, as we were looking at that market and understanding that it's a large market, and really we felt like those smaller nonprofits in a lot of ways were underrepresented in that space. And so decided that we really wanted to take a lot of what we had learned over the last, 20 years at the time, and getting to work with some nonprofits and for-profits, and just try and build something that we felt like would work better for, and specifically design something that worked better for that mid-size and down smaller nonprofit. And so that's kind of where DonorDock started, is that concept. And from the beginning, we've tried to always have in our mind, as we think about the product and how we're going to change it and evolve it and grow it, that we continue to kind of look at it through the lens of how will this work for a smaller nonprofit. And I think we can thank having worked with other systems in the past and seeing where there were gaps that to help us kind of guide us in that. So I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I mean, you basically said it. I think we got to a point where working with those larger systems, we absolutely recognized that they weren't necessarily working the best for the smaller nonprofits, and then realizing that maybe the best way to help is to build something ourselves, which is what we started with. And I think it's grown and it's really served a lot of people.
I think too, we think about that idea of innovating through simplicity and how important that is, where, you can always build more features and add new things and add, shiny objects into the product. But at the end of the day, I think for that market specifically, the idea of trying to build something that's innovative because it is simpler to use and yet still provides what people need. There's a lot of power to that concept, and that's been something we've tried to kind of hold as somewhat of a North Star as we've kind of built the product and kept it going here.
So that's interesting for me as a non-technological person, hearing your perspective on what you saw was and wasn't working out there. But I'm interested to know also, Bridget, your wife, had launched a nonprofit. Did you see firsthand some of the struggles that she was having in the nonprofit space as well?
For sure. I mean, so she's your typical founder of a nonprofit who cared about the mission, and at the end of the day realized to keep it going, you have to raise some money unless you just want to do everything volunteer, which, she does for the most part with Adapt Music. But, having that right in our own home and understanding what a one-person shop would need to kind of be able to operate certainly helped guide the product. I think there are other influences we have as well. There's a wonderful lady here in Fargo named Babs Kohler. Babs used to work for one of the nonprofits that we worked with previously. And, we would often talk about how can we build something that's going to work well. And we used to use the phrase, let's build it for Babs, something that we felt like would work well for her. And if we using her as sort of that persona of a person that's in these nonprofits that's probably got more things on their plate than they know how to get done, and you want to try and help them achieve more in less time. And so lots of influences were a part of what we were trying to do and what we were trying to build. Tanya at the Arts Partnership here in Fargo. So, we were lucky in Fargo. There's such a vibrant nonprofit community here in this area. I think we have 8 nonprofits in Cass and Clay County alone right here in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And so having access to a broad range of nonprofits, I think we had 10 beta customers that we gave the product to free for life if they would help us kind of figure out what it needed to do. And they're still, I think, all still on the product and still using it.
We still use them to beta some features and get feedback for.
So we were lucky that way, that we had a market here that we felt like if we could prove it out here, we could really understand that product market fit, and be able to work with local people to get there. And I think that has really proven to be something that was instrumental in, having something that worked for people pretty quickly right out of the gate.
Yeah, it was great. Great having those first customers local, because we could actually meet them and we're familiar with their organizations. And I remember back in the early days, we'd have user groups. I don't know if we call them that, but we'd get the local customers together and kind of go over what's happening in DonorDock and help them prepare for their fundraising efforts. So that was a great experience, and it's great that we still have a lot of local resources to lean on.
It seems like that was so long ago, but really that was just a handful of years ago.
It seems like a long time ago.
But Andrew, what was it like when Matt came to you and said, I've got this idea, I really want you to come take a look at it? You had worked with him for a dozen years prior to him coming to you. Was it more of like, Matt's got another idea? Was it, here's something that I get to play with? What was that like?
Well, Matt has no shortage of ideas, that's for sure. There's been other little things that he's, come up with ideas, and we explored a little bit, but nothing really stuck like DonorDock. But I remember specifically him showing me his proof of concept, like in a parking lot in the winter or something, in his pickup outside of work or something like that. And I don't know, it was good timing, because at the time I was really looking for, a little extra something to both like enhance my career, but also something that's purposeful. So the timing was great, and I was interested, and that's kind of how it started.
So it didn't take much convincing then once you saw what it was?
No, I mean, I recognized the need, and it was a good, solid idea. So there wasn't really anything to hold me back.
So for the both of you then, you started working nights and weekends essentially in Matt's basement, getting together to plan things, build things. Did that ever get frustrating, or to the point where you just wanted to walk away before it ever launched?
Not for me. I mean, there were moments where it was frustrating, never to a point where I would want to have walked away. I think my philosophy personally was, I was working and doing consulting to try and pay the bills while we were building this. So it was a lot of nights. And I used to just tell myself every day I need to get a couple hours into DonorDock. And so that's what I used to try and do was, move it forward. And I think that's a really good lesson actually for our nonprofit customers. Like sometimes you just have to start, and you have to just try and move things along, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not exactly how you foresaw or what you thought it would be. And so I just tried every night to get at least a couple hours in. And I think Andrew was kind of doing the same. And, we wrote the whole product between the two of us when we launched it in June of 2018. And it was a lot of nights and weekends and efforts. And there's so much to starting something like this besides just building the product. We had to get a website up for the product. We had to have a way for people to pay us. We had to have all these different things that you don't always think about early. And then you realize we have to figure these things out. And so there was that would always, sometimes that was what would lead to the frustration for me, is like, another thing that we, hadn't really thought through that we've got to figure out now. But it was a good challenge. And, working with Andrew was great on trying to get it to a point of completion. So,
I never wanted to walk away from it either. If anything, the frustration was more the opposite. I was frustrated with what was preventing us from really going head first into it. Obviously,
having to pay bills.
Yeah, bills and mortgages and everything. You can't just
we weren't college kids
quit your day job
that wasn't our reality
and dive into it. But luckily we had the right skill sets and mentality to kind of do this on the nights and weekends, and eventually we were able to kind of walk away from everything else and concentrate all our efforts on DonorDock, which has been really great blessing.
Yeah. So when it came close to officially launching, what was that like? Were you excited to be able to help? Were you nervous of launching? Were you thinking maybe the product would fail? What was going through your mind as you got ready for launch?
All of the above, probably.
I don't think I ever thought it would. I have gone through cycles as an entrepreneur of like that blind optimism that like there's for a long time, like I just never thought it wouldn't work. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably what kept me going, was just this, like, I don't know how this couldn't work, and then as things went along and, you kind of go, gosh, this is going to work, right? It's, you kind of shift and then you get back to, no, it's going to work. It's going to work. So like I've gone through a broad range of different emotional states as it relates to things. But I think early on for me, it was just excitement and like this feeling of we could keep trying to make the perfect thing forever and never launch it. And I remember I spoke at 1 million cups in April of 28. And I got on stage and said, we're launching this in June, on June 1st, because I felt like we just got to have a date. Like otherwise we're just going to keep delaying it. And so we did, we launched it June 1st. And, I think for me, it was a relief to actually get it out. And then that immediately shifted from relief to, oh man, now we have a product we have to be able to support and customers who are actually using this. So lots of ups and downs throughout the process for me. But
there's still ups and downs, just different things leading to that. But I'd say it was a relief to get it out. It was exciting to get it out. And I think for me, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I probably had some expectations that turned out a little different, which was fine. But, you just have to get it out there and then start learning from what's happening.
Yeah. Speaking of expectations, we had one paying customer that signed up in that first month that we had launched it. And I think you have this idea that you're going to turn it on and then it's just gonna, like, people are just gonna sign up like magically.
And, the gates.
Right. And I think that was a reality check for sure, that like we had one paying customer in the first month and 4 in the second month. So I always joke that we had 400% growth from the first to the second month. But at the end of the day, I think it really was a reality check that, we had spent a lot of time on the product and maybe not as much time on a go-to-market strategy. So, I think those are things we kind of had to figure out under fire and under the gun once we had gotten it rolled out. And it took a while, frankly. Like it was a very slow burn for the first year and a half while we were trying to still do the other things that paid the bills and, kind of keep things moving. So it was definitely not your typical, or, not the stories you hear of somebody launching a product and people
waking up the next morning and 800 new subscribers.
It wasn't that. So it was, and that was eye-opening for us, I think. But I will mirror what Andrew said. I think the biggest challenge was that we couldn't for a long time focus just on DonorDock. And that was where the frustration came for me too, is like, I just wanted to go all in on that. But we have the reality of, I think we were both in our late 30s when we started this, and, you have kids and you have a house and you have things that, lifestyle that's, kind of accustomed to. So now I will say, I think, somebody told me that during that 1 million cups presentation, I think Greg from, Emerging Prairie had said, the average age of a successful entrepreneur starting something was like 38. And I was 38, I think, at the time. So I at least felt better about that. I definitely, looking back at my own career and just my own maturity and so forth, like, I don't know how some of these people are able to come up with their idea when they're 20 years old
Yeah.
and be able to actually execute. And I would not have been anywhere close to being ready to do something like that back then. So I'm thankful for, the career arc that I had to kind of get prepared to go and try and start something.
Yeah. So, what would you say from the time that it launched and started to today, if you could take that 30,000-foot view over the last 5 years? What have you learned that's maybe different or better from the day that it launched?
Oh,
Well, I think for me, while you're thinking, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that you can build the best product that you can imagine, but if you don't have a good go-to-market strategy and a plan for how to get it out, then you may end up with just a product that doesn't have any users or very many users. And so, I think my expectations early on versus the reality of what it takes to get a product into the hands of customers and really start to see that growth. I feel like I've learned a lot and can look back on things and decisions and say, I wish I'd have done something differently here at this inflection point that I didn't do. But
Mm,
at the end of the day, that's all really good learning. And I think has helped us kind of over the last couple of years really start to drive that growth that we're looking for and, build this national brand. I think we have customers in 48 or 49 states now. So we're really trying to build this national brand, this product that's helping nonprofits all around the country. But yeah, I think more focus on the go-to-market strategy earlier would have been something that, looking back, I think we've really learned a lot about and would probably do maybe a little bit differently.
mm,
yeah. And for myself, I would say that how you think somebody's going to use something is probably not reality. You can't do something like this in a silo and just think that you're making all the right decisions. You really have to listen to customer feedback and really understand their processes and what they need to get out of it. So that's and continues to be a good way to learn for me. That's why it was so important, as we just talked about, to get the product out there initially and start getting feedback and really learn what needs people have.
And I think that's such a perfect answer, really, when you relate it to the customers that DonorDock serves. That what both of you answered in that is so translatable to the nonprofit world in get going, get out there and have faith in your mission, but also maybe instead of a go to market strategy like you mentioned, Matt, it's a mission communication
Yep.
strategy. How can we get people behind this? How can we really market our mission and our message out there to others? And then, Andrew, just as you said, continual loop of feedback and making adaptations and tweaks and changes along the way. I think any nonprofit can do a plug and play essentially of that mindset or strategy and have it work for them. So that was
Yep.
really more of a beautiful answer than you may have anticipated. But what are your hopes for the nonprofit world for the future in terms of what DonorDock will become?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I always hope that you can continue to close the gap that nonprofits have in relation to access to technology and things in comparison to their for-profit counterparts. And that's really, for me, a big part of what, we try and do with DonorDock is build these tools that can level that playing field a bit and have something that is really meant for them, that works well for those small nonprofits and that they can afford. And so, that's my hope, is that as technology continues to evolve and to grow, that we and other providers in the space can continue to try and figure out how to bring those tools to these small nonprofits in a way that is usable by them and that's cost effective for them.
Yeah,
Mm.
being accessible and transparent and affordable, and while still growing with all the new technology and ways to communicate and fundraise, I think is important.
And I'll just go back to kind of that idea of simplification as innovation through simplification. I think anybody can take and dump out something that uses AI, but let's figure out how do we make something that uses AI really work for these nonprofits. And that's just one example. There's so much technology is changing so quickly now. How do we take the brunt of the complexity of it and kind of obfuscate that away from our customers so that it's usable for them, it's easy to use for them, but at the end of the day it's driven by this complicated technology on the background. And I think that's kind of what excites me and drives me, and I think our team in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, and it's been that way since day one. I mean, that's why we started it, and that's kind of the same guiding principles we always come back to even now.
Yeah, a core value of ours is simplification, and I think that's or simplicity, and I think that comes through in not only how we try and run the business, but also in how we try and build the product. And we don't always hit the mark. There's certain things that we know we want to do better, but we're always striving to improve, and I think that's a key as well.
And I think this is a really great segue to talk about the team, because the nonprofit world has so many intricacies and is a really special place outside of the for-profit world. So how do you build a team? How do you vet team members who can really support those nonprofit missions and values and even the core values of DonorDock?
Well, we've been incredibly lucky so far. We have a wonderful team, and it's really come together just kind of amazingly. But everybody kind of shares the same passion. There's team members that have experience directly with nonprofits, so that's obviously one way. When they come on, they really understand what we're doing. And I don't know, we've just been incredibly lucky. We have our core values that we always come back to as a way, when we're working on new features or even working through customer issues or any kind of problem that we need to work through, we refer back to those core values, and that's really helped us, and we've all been on board with it.
Yeah, and we even use those core values heavily in our hiring process and our annual review process. And our core values are transparency, empathy, confidence, simplicity, and versatility. And I think one of the things that I really love about the company and our team is how often I hear those core values being referenced in by team members across the board in their own decision making, and and they're talked about. I had a podcast interview with somebody recently where we talked about that idea of like behavioralizing those values, and I really feel like our team does such a great job and they were all involved in helping come up with those values. So I think that's where part of the buy-in comes from, for sure. But those values are extremely important to us, and if you think about them, that we've talked even in our conversation, I think anecdotally they've come up, simplification and, our confidence in the product that we're providing and our transparency with our pricing and with customers, all those things. So I think that's one of the reasons we've been able to build such a good team, is that we're grounded around those values, and they really are something that we use as an organization. They're not just 5 buzzwords that come out once a year in the annual, meeting where we review them quickly. Right. They really are a part of what we do and how we operate. And I think that helps to get buy-in with the team. And we also are big believers in, there are certain things we can probably train people to do, but there are things that you can't train people. And so when we've talked and interviewed people, I think we've really been looking very heavily at cultural fit and, do they have kind of that philanthropic, empathetic, viewpoint in how they would want to help these nonprofits that we're helping around the country. And so I think that, it's something right from the beginning in our hiring process that is a big part of it. And I think that's, Andrew said it, we've been so lucky in the team that we've brought on and that we have. And I think some of that is luck. And I think some of it is, just really as a business understanding our core values and living them and hiring through them and, our performance management, all of that.
Yeah. And this isn't something that came up earlier, but it is one of my favorite stories. So Matt hired me in 2000. Andrew, so you hadn't been there very much longer before me, but I remember being in Matt's office and just hearing him pontificate about life and say, 10 years from now, within 10 years time, I would love to build something that would really help propel the nonprofits to succeed in their mission. And then 10 years later, here comes DonorDock. And I think that that is such a testament to staying and remaining committed to your vision and to finding the motivation and the grit to power through, even when outside influences maybe are trying to motivate you to do otherwise. So it's been a pleasure working with you gentlemen for so long. Oh my goodness, too long maybe. But I really have just loved and enjoyed seeing where you've come over the last 5 years, especially in DonorDock, but over the whole timeline of your career. So thank you for joining me on the Beyond the Donation podcast, gentlemen. I hope it was fun for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we wrap up here, is there any word of encouragement you would like to pass on to nonprofits as we close?
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think that's a real, we have a tendency, I think, a lot of times to not want to do something until we can do the perfect thing. And sometimes the good thing is good enough. And so, don't wait. If you have something you want to try, some idea, something that you want to do, I think get it to a point of good and make it better as you go and kind of iterate on it. And I think that can be really powerful message to nonprofits for sure.
Yeah. Just be confident in yourself. And like Matt said, just get it out there, try, and you can only learn from your mistakes.
I love it. Well, if you're listening to Beyond the Donation today, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Share this out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and wherever you happen to follow us on social media. And we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Val.